The third track radius calculation method the Practicad offers is the method width proportional. The width proportional method is going to factor in the width of the radius elbow into choosing what the proper spacing is. It's also going to require that you choose the proper track radius ratio that you would like to use for your drawing. If you have never used this calculation method before, you'll probably want to make sure that you find the track radius ratio that suits you best. In this particular tutorial, we're going to choose 0.25 just to demonstrate how it chooses the spacing for us. We're going to hit Save key. We're going to exit out. We have it set as width proportional. 0.25 is the radius ratio. We're going to exit out of library. Now what we're going to do is click on the radius vane. We're going to click on our fitting. And Practicad, because we've already got the PCAD vane selected, as you can see here, it's calculated 3 tracks for us based on our default number of vanes or default track count. So we're now going to show you how it came up with these radiuses for the first 3 vanes you see. To calculate the track 1 radius, Practicad, when you're on the width proportional formula, is following the formula you see here. Width proportional is calculated by, and here you can see it says track 1 is the radius of the fitting. Currently, that happens to be 27. And you add that to the width of the fitting, which in this particular tutorial is currently 36. And you multiply the width of the fitting times the radius ratio. So if you take width of fitting, we're going to use the calculator. Width of fitting is 36, so we put 36 in here. And we multiply that by the radius ratio, which is 0.25. And we hit equals. The value we get here is actually the spacing between the throat radius of the elbow and the first track radius. So this section of the formula right here that we're currently highlighting happens to be the difference between the throat radius and the track radius 1. So if we simply add 9 to whatever the radius is, in this particular exercise the radius is 27, that's going to tell us what the first track radius is. So we're going to take 9 and add the radius of the throat. That's going to give us the first track. The first track is 36 inches. And more importantly, it's 9 inches away from the throat. Now what we do to calculate the second track is all we do is actually take the spacing of what the first track was, which was 9. And we multiply that by 1 minus the radius ratio. For example, the radius ratio is 1/4. 1 minus 1/4 is 0.75. If you take 9 and you multiply it by 0.75, the value you get here, which is 6.75, should be the space between track 1 and track 2. So if you take 6.75 and add it to 36, which we're going to do in the calculator, plus 36, and hit equals, it's going to give you 42.75. That's the track radius 2. Now, once again, if you want to get track radius 3, you simply take the spacing between the first track and the second track and multiply it by your radius ratio. And you can see right here in the formula, we're going to start over just so you can watch it one more time how it's being calculated. You can see here that track 2 is going to be track 1 minus radius. That means track radius 36. We're going to put in 36. If we subtract the throat radius, which happens to be 27, so we're subtracting the first radius from the radius of the throat. So if we do that, we minus 27. It's telling us the spacing between these two is 9 inches. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say that this value is going to be 9 right here, track 1 to radius 1. This is also known as the spacing between the first two tracks, the throat and track 1. Well, if we take 9 and we multiply it by 1 minus our radius ratio, our radius ratio was 0.25. So 1 minus 0.25 equals 3/4 or 0.75. So what we have to do is we have to take this section, which is 0.75. We multiply it by the spacing between our first two veins, which was calculated by this here. That happened to be 9, so we're going to say times 9. And that's going to give us 6.75. And what that is, what we're calculating in this section of the formula that we've got highlighted currently, is we're calculating the difference between vein 1 and vein 2. So what we do is we take this number, 6.75, we add it to the track radius 1, which you can see up here is 36. So we're going to add that to 36. And it's going to tell us the track radius 2 should be 42.75. So once again, if we now take track radius 2 and subtract it from track radius 1, it's going to give us the spacing between these veins. We multiply that number by 0.75, which is 1 minus our radius ratio, and that's going to tell us the spacing we should have between track 2 and track 3. So we're going to go through that one more time. Now we're going to go to calculate track 3. Here what we do is we take track 2 and subtract it from track 1. So here you got the values, track 2, track 1. So we're going to take 42.75, which is the track radius 2, and we're going to subtract track radius 1, which is 36. That's telling us the spacing between these two tracks, 1 and 2. That is the number that would be generated from the formula we have highlighted here. Now we have to multiply that times 1 minus the radius ratio. Once again, the radius ratio is 0.25. 1 minus the radius ratio is going to be 0.75. So we multiply 6.75 times 0.75 and hit equals. That number here should be the distance between track 2 and track 3. So we simply add it to whatever track 2 radius is. So we're going to say plus 42.75. 42.75. If you hit equals, you can see you get 47.81. That is what Practicat had automatically calculated for track 3. Now what we're going to do is try to figure out what the fourth track radius would be if we were to add one. To do that, we're simply going to take the track 3 radius minus the track 2 radius to get the spacing between them. So we've already got track 3 in the calculator, 47.813. And now we're just going to subtract track 2, 42.75. So we're going to say minus 42.75. And here we're going to hit equals. And that's giving us the spacing between track 2 and track 3. We now need to take that spacing and multiply it times 1 minus our radius ratio. That number is 0.75. So if we say this number times 0.75 and hit equals, that is giving us the spacing between track 3 and track 4. You can see right here, track 4 equals, it says track 3 minus track 2, we did that already, times 1 minus the radius ratio. And that gives us this number right here. And all we need to do now is add that number, because that's the new spacing between track 3 and track 4. So we just add that number to track 3, 47.813. So we're going to put it in our calculator. And this number we get is going to be what we should have if in fact we go to do a fourth count, 51.610. And if we click count up, you can see 51.610. It would be rounded. So here's what we've got. The number is correct. We've calculated exactly what the fourth track would be utilizing the width proportional ratio. So these are the three methods we have: equal distance, radius proportional, and width proportional, for automatically calculating the spacing between veins.